All right, so today we're going to be looking at Unit 1, Lesson 2 in code.org, and it's ideally talking about representing information. So we're going to be looking at ways that we do that. So we're going to start, you should have in front of you the slideshow that was on Canvas. So if you don't have that, I would go ahead and launch that and have it so you can edit it. So if you don't have it, go ahead and pause this and go ahead and get that and then have that open as well, because we will be entering information into that or typing up answers into that slideshow as we go along. So if you notice on the slideshow, the very first thing that you have, it says name, and then it says how would you define information? So if I show you, your screen should look something like this. So go ahead and type your name in there. And then what I'd like you guys to do is take a minute to answer, what is your definition of information? So pause, go ahead and fill it out, and then when you're done, come back to the slide. All right, so now that you have an opportunity to actually kind of respond to what you believe is the definition of information, there are definitely many ways in which we can think about the word information. One possible definition that we'll explore today has to do with how we answer a question. So we're going to investigate what it takes to send that information back and forth to one another. So we're going to look at ways that we can actually do that. And normally we'd be in the class and we would be doing this with materials ourselves, but you're unfortunately virtual, so we're going to be doing it electronically. And so what you're going to be focusing on today is you're going to be building your own device for sending and receiving messages, which you will use to answer questions that you rate. Okay? So going on to the next slide, what I'd like you guys to do is look at challenge number 1. So we want to write down a question that has 2 possible answers. So maybe like, is your favorite color blue or green? Okay, so if you can't write the words blue or green on your device, how would you know that you're answering blue for one and green for the other? Or if you're saying, are you tired today? Yes or no? How would you know that someone's saying yes, and how would you know that someone's saying no? So your device needs to find a way that will signal that you're asking a question and that it would communicate back to the other person that they're answering and then what their answer is. Okay, so you're going to build a device out of electronic classroom supplies and communicate the answer to your question. So first, what I'd like you to do is take a second to write down that question in this document and then what the possible answers to that question are. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and proceed on to go ahead and pause it and do that, and then go ahead and proceed on to the next slide. All right, so here in front of you are some possible everyday items. There's definitely other items out there. So if you see that there's another article or a type of article that you'd like to use for the slide, you can do so. And these can be used to communicate the answer to your question from the previous slide. For example, the question might be, do you like cats or dogs? So the answer, cats equals move my piece of string vertically, and for dogs, move my piece of string horizontally. So then that would assume that someone is holding the string, and then depending which way you're moving the string would answer the question. No language can be used. For example, if my question is your favorite color blue or green, I can't use the words blue or green in my device. So I can't have a pen that writes it out. I have to have another way. So you want to be as creative as you like, and you can bring in more items on the next slide if you need to. So how it looks is as follows. So here, you're going to drag and drop or modify or duplicate any of these items to help you create the device, and feel free to use any other images. So let's say I'm going to do the string that I just said. I would move it over here. Whoops. I would click on the device and I would drag it over here. And I can't do that the way that I have it right now, but you would click on it and then you would drag it over. And then maybe you'd say, well, it's going to connect to a bell, and maybe the bell would ring twice or something. So you would put the bell and you put it on there. And then you could go ahead and describe how the device is used to communicate. So you want to make sure that you kind of indicate what would actually, so you have the devices out there kind of hook them the way that you can, and then you would indicate how you would actually use it. You can also use animation through if you use PowerPoint or slides. And so, the bell could ring or whatever if you want to do that, or you could just describe it here. So take a minute to drag and drop any way that you can think of to create a device and how it would answer, how it signal that you're asking the question. You would signal what the answer was, and the person knows what the answer was given. So take a minute to do that. Go ahead and pause the video. And then when you're done, move on to the next slide. Okay, so now we're moving on to challenge number 2. And challenge number 2 is you want to modify your question. So there are 4 possible choices now. So no, you may have to actually modify your question. So if I'm asking you a yes or no, are you tired today? Yes or no. I can maybe say yes, no, a little, or a lot. You can kind of do it that way. Or you feel like, oh, that doesn't really, give me 4 good options. Maybe I'll pick, what's your favorite color? And I do blue, green, red, and yellow. So I could add. Okay, so take a minute to find a question or change your question. So now you have 4 possible answers, and go ahead and list what those answers would be. Go ahead and pause it and type that up. And then when you're done, you can move on to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, except for we're going to now modify your device to communicate 4 answers. So you may have a device that you're like, oh, wow, I only did it so I had 2. Now it doesn't even work for 4, so I need to change my device. So you can either modify your device, you may need to just add some answers, different ways of doing answers. You decide which is best for you. So again, you want to modify your device to communicate the 4 answers to your question from the previous slide. And so you're going to indicate here how your device has changed or how the other person knows that the answers have changed. And then go ahead and write that description there as well. So go ahead and pause this and go to your slide and go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we're going to go into challenge number 3. And now we're going to modify the answer so that there are 8 possible choices. Okay, so you want to update your device to communicate. You're going to eventually be updating your device to communicate one of 8 possible answers to the question. So think of how your question needs to change. And again, do you need to change your question altogether and then come up with a new question that has a possibility of 8 answers? Or do you need to just add some answers to your question? So take a minute to pause this and to update the question and answers in your slide. Okay, so now you're going to update your device to communicate one of 8 possible answers to your question. So you have to consider, should I modify my device? Can I use it in a different way? Or do I need to make a brand new device? So you're going to take the time to go ahead and do that. And then again, add some narrative that says, what has changed? How do I know the answers, etc. So, like a circle might be yes, and a line might be no or something, again, through motion. So take a minute, go ahead and pause this, go back to your slide, and go ahead and modify as best you possibly can. Okay, so once you're done doing that, we want to think back to your simple 2-option device from challenge number 1, okay? And so instead of just changing your device and adding more options and more rules every time you add more answers, how could you simply modify the way you use your device with only 2 options, but still have more than just 2 answers communicated? Okay, so take a minute to think about your 2-option device and look at that question and answer that on your slide. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and come back. Okay, so when you are done with doing all that, we're going to have you go back to your co.org, Unit 1, Lesson 2, Number 2, which should be your Check Your Understanding, and go ahead and answer the